What's up, people? Tangy Nacho here, and welcome to the video. Today's the recap of Overwatch League Season 2, Stage 1, Week 4. From now on, I'm going to be doing the recaps and the predictions both on Wednesday, so both in the same video, the day before the Overwatch League matches every week. So make sure you subscribe, join the Tang Gang, and stay updated on everything Overwatch League. Like the video if you enjoyed the recaps, and like I said, I'm going to be doing my predictions for this week at the end of the video, so make sure you stick around till the end. Alright, now with all that out of the way, let's jump into this. This week had 2 less matches than normal because there was only 3 matches on Thursday and Friday. Starting us off on Thursday was the Atlanta Reign versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. And like I've been telling you guys from the beginning, the LA Gladiators are insane. Decay is finally playing to his fullest extent and able to support Roar in his fairly aggressive style of Reinhardt. And it's crazy because the Atlanta Reign is an incredibly strong team, like I was thinking top 3, maybe even top 2 in the league, depending on how they fare against New York and Vancouver. But the LA Gladiators showed us this week that it was just a slow start without Decay, and from now on I think they're going to be turning up the heat like crazy. The match ended 4-0 in favor of the Los Angeles Gladiators. Then we had a match between the Los Angeles Valiant and the Philadelphia Fusion, which was honestly disappointing in multiple ways. First off, the obvious one, the Valiant still can't get a win. But almost more importantly, the Philadelphia Fusion look way worse than I expected going into the league. They just keep making mistakes that they really should not be making. I don't understand why in this Reinhardt meta they're not playing Fraggy over Sado. Like, I get that he's a better main tank in general, but he's a Winston player. Fraggy didn't shine last season because he's not a Winston player, but he does have a really strong Reinhardt, I think stronger than Sado. Philly was able to pull out the win 3-2, but it should never have been that close in a match between the runner-up from last season and the team that's now 0-7. Next we had Toronto Defiant versus the Chengdu Hunters. It's always a blast to watch Chengdu because they play so many interesting and different comps with DPS, and I mean, DPS is so rare now, everybody actually wants to see people play DPS. And players on Toronto like Ivy got to play DPS like they should be, so it was a really fun match. Toronto clearly the better team, possibly top 3 in the league. They pulled out the victory 3-1. And that was it for Thursday. Moving on to Friday, we had the Paris Eternal versus the Vancouver Titans. I truly think that people are overhyping the Paris Eternal a bit. I mean, they are a really strong team and they put up a good fight in this one. It did end up 4-0 for the Vancouver Titans, but the maps were all pretty close. Vancouver is just an incredibly strong team, incredibly aggressive, and Paris couldn't quite stand up to it. Then after that, we had another 4-0, this time the New York Excelsior defeating the San Francisco Shock. And again, despite it being a 4-0, this match was incredibly close. All the maps were decided by just 1 point, and it honestly looked like San Francisco could be the team to upset New York. But they weren't able to finish it off and they lost. The fact that it went 4-0 too really sucks for San Francisco because they need every map they can get going into the stage playoffs. And we ended out Friday with yet another 4-0. That's right, all the games on Friday were 4-0. This time Dallas Fuel over the Shanghai Dragons. Considering they just played last week and it went 3-2 in a nail-biter, this was not expected. Granted, just like the other games on this day, they were all really close maps in this set, but Shanghai was just making too many mistakes and not capitalizing on Dallas's. Their history both last season and at the beginning of this season is really holding them back. I think people think they're worse than they are. Shanghai is a really strong team, especially with Gamsu now, and they play the Sombra comp better than almost any other team in the league. So it's unfortunate we won't see them in the stage playoffs, but still a really good match overall. But then to start off on Saturday was one of the sloppiest Overwatch League matches I have ever seen. It was one of the only matches I actually got to watch in full this week. I was pretty busy, and man was I disappointed. As I was watching and I saw Houston winning team fights, I kept thinking to myself, is it because they're making good plays or because the Valiant is actually just worse? Both teams were just playing really sloppy and it wasn't a good look for Houston despite the fact that they won 2-1. Valiant end out the stage 0-7, it's heartbreaking, but I'm pretty sure they'll be able to turn it around in stage 2 as long as they don't let this stage get to them. Like I say in pretty much all my videos, the Valiant has a very good team, a very good roster. They got rid of their head coach, so they are trying to revamp some stuff, and I think that they'll be able to pull it off in the next stage. Then we had the Seoul Dynasty versus the Washington Justice. This one was kind of closer than it maybe should have been, because Seoul was kind of playing their backup players. Not that their backup players are bad by any means, they're still in the Overwatch League. But I mean, they weren't playing their best players and they were still able to defeat Washington 3-1. The main thing I noticed Washington making mistakes in is their ult usage. A lot of times I see Janice go for a shatter and I'm just like, why? Why are you ulting there? As a Rhine player myself, Janice is one of the hardest people to watch in the league. Next up was the Guangzhou Charge versus the LA Gladiators. And once again, the Gladiators showed us that this was the week they come out strong. After a hard loss on Nepal, they brought it back and ended up winning 3-1. I can't really pin down exactly how good Guangzhou is, because sometimes they come up with huge wins that I don't expect, and other times, like this, they just lose pretty badly. I think this time it's a case of the Los Angeles Gladiators coming off a big win against Atlanta. Their morale was really high, and they were able to stomp Guangzhou as well. And the last match of Saturday was the Hangzhou Spark versus the Toronto Defiant. I really like both of these teams and they're both really strong, but Toronto is obviously the stronger team. They came out with the victory 3-0. Despite the fact that Hangzhou didn't take a map, they were able to draw on Volskaya, and like in most of their games, they didn't look terrible. They're a middle-of-the-line team that's had some tough losses so far this stage, and it's unfortunate, but I hope to see them do better in Stage 2. Toronto Defiant looking to make a statement in this stage's playoffs. Then on Sunday, we had the Paris Eternal versus the San Francisco Shock. And like I mentioned before, I think Paris is a little overhyped. I also don't think San Francisco is as good as people think, but they were still able to take out Paris 3-1. And it wasn't really that close of a match either. It seems like Paris is trying to rotate Soon out in favor of Shadowburn, which I think is a good idea, but the Shock were able to take advantage of this instability and take the win. And then next, one of the best results coming out of this week was Shanghai Dragons defeating London Spitfire 3-2. This game was so back and forth in the weirdest of ways. London won the first map 2-0, Shanghai won the second map 3-0, London won the third map 1-0, and Shanghai won the last map 3-0. So when they win, they do it good. But then going into Ilios for the tiebreaker, it went to map 3, and Shanghai was able to pull it out. I'm so happy that Shanghai is doing so well now, but man, what is going on with the London Spitfire? Even last season they seemed to struggle with this type of inconsistency. One week I'm sitting here saying they finally got their footing and they're going to be just as good as I predicted, but then the next week they're losing to people like the Shanghai Dragons, which is a great team, but I don't think they're as good as the Spitfire in terms of pure skill. Like, Spitfire might not even make the stage playoffs. Not looking so hot for the returning champions. And then we had the Florida Mayhem versus the Boston Uprising. It really sucks that Boston didn't have fusions for a few games there in week 2, because if they did, I think they would easily be well into the playoff range. But as of now, they're sitting at 9th place. In terms of the Mayhem, they've shown up for a few matches, but overall they're one of the bottom tier teams, I think. I didn't expect it to be a 4-0, but Boston definitely showed us that they have a lot more potential than we might realize. And lastly, we had the Vancouver Titans versus the Chengdu Hunters. And this was actually a super exciting match. Despite the fact that Vancouver was going into it undefeated and Chengdu wasn't looking that great, they took it all the way to Game 5 in a pretty thrilling match. It would have been a great story if Chengdu was able to get the win, but I'm all about that hype train. Vancouver, best team in the league, changed my mind. Cannot wait to see them face off against New York Excelsior in the playoffs. And that was it. So taking a look at the standings real quick, we still have New York and Vancouver undefeated at the top with 7 and 6 wins respectively. Right below them we've got Toronto Defiant 5-2, Philadelphia Fusion and Dallas Fuel 4-2, Atlanta Reign 3-2, San Francisco Shock 4-3, and Guangzhou Charge 3-3. That's the playoff cutoff right there. Boston is just below Guangzhou, also at 3-3 with +2, same thing with Seoul. Houston and London also at 3-3, but they've got a -1 differential. Gladiators just starting to get their stride now, so they're only 3-4 with +1. Hangzhou and Shanghai also at 3-4. Paris Eternal at 2-3. Chengdu at 2-4. Florida in the same spot they've always been since Season 1, around 1-5, right near the bottom. And then Washington Justice and LA Valiant still with no wins to speak of. Despite the fact that some teams are undefeated and some teams don't have a win, I still feel like any team can pretty much beat any other team at any time. It's a super exciting season and I really hope Overwatch League stays like this for a long time to come. Now, if you're still watching, thanks for sticking around. I'm going to quickly do my predictions for Week 5. Only 8 matches this week because Week 5 is a shorter schedule, only matches on Saturday and Sunday. First up is Washington Justice versus Paris Eternal. Paris is looking a little weaker recently, but Washington still doesn't have a win, so I find it hard to predict Washington will beat Paris. I'm going to go with Paris 3-1. Then London Spitfire versus Seoul Dynasty. Not really sure what to do with either of these teams. Probably going to be London, but it's probably going to be really close, 3-2. Moving on to Boston Uprising versus Dallas Fuel. Both of these teams looking really strong right now, coming off 4-0 wins last week. But I gotta stay loyal to Boston and say they're gonna take it 3-1. Then to end off Saturday, we have Atlanta Reign versus Chengdu Hunters. I don't think the Reign's loss to the Gladiators is gonna get to them. I think Chengdu is looking better, but not quite good enough to beat Atlanta, so it's probably 3-1 Atlanta. On Sunday, we have Philly Fusion versus Paris Eternal. I want to say Philly will win, but I'm actually not sure because of how shaky their gameplay has been. I think it's definitely going to go to Game 5, and I think Paris might actually take it in the end, 3-2. Then we have Washington Justice versus Florida Mayhem, and I think this is where Washington finally gets their first win. If they don't, it's going to be a big indicator that they're actually way worse than we even thought. But I think they'll take the win 3-2. After that is Houston Outlaws versus Atlanta Reign. And again, I think Atlanta Reign's loss to the Gladiators was a fluke. I think Houston beating Valiant doesn't really mean much. It was a really sloppy game. So I think Atlanta's probably going to take this one 3-1. And to end out the regular games for Stage 1, Guangzhou Charge versus Vancouver Titans. It would be unfortunate for Vancouver to lose here, and I don't think they will. Guangzhou's a decent team, but not good enough to beat the behemoths that is Vancouver. I think it's actually going to be a 4-0 stomp in favor of the Titans. And that does it for the video. Again, thanks for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. Leave a comment down below if you want to discuss anything about the Overwatch League. Like the video, and of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be back on Monday, but in the meantime, check out some of my other videos, and until we meet again, later people!